Hi, hello, I'm Sam Harrison. I read, review, and discuss fantasy and science fiction books. Today we have a full spoiler discussion of The Dragon Reborn, the third book in The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. Joining me today, I have my usual co-host, partner in crime, Matt from Bask in the Story,
Hello, Sam. Lovely to be here.
and special guest, spoilerizer, Ross, the face of Hardy's books.
It is so wonderful to get to talk to you two lovely gentlemen today. Um, I didn't know if I was ever going to read any more books from Wheel of Time, but this opportunity came up, and I thought, well, let's go for it, eh? So here we are.
So let's. What I thought we could do today is what we've kind of done previously, which is everyone give kind of brief non-spoiler thoughts. So for those people who might want to, for some reason, watch 5 minutes of a video that's an hour long and then go away, this is the section for you guys. And then we can go straight into full spoiler thoughts where we'll talk, characters, plots, and kind of the fun stuff we felt about the book. So, Ross, as the guest, would you like to go first on your non-spoiler thoughts?
Yeah.
You can give us your rating as well, if you would like. I mean, I know you rate things interestingly at Hardy's
I'll
Towers.
I'll try and do a conventional rating for your audience. So I think this is a four-star book for me, 4 out of 5, which is kind of roughly what I've rated the previous two books in Wheel of Time. Um, so I liked it, and I think it's probably the best of the three. And I think the main reason I liked it more than the other two is because the choices of the characters were the least frustrating. I think the one of the reasons that I kind of dropped Wheel of Time after the Great Hunt was just my sheer frustration at some of those choices which the characters made. Whereas I think in this one, everyone is on their um, decision making A game. Um, Fewer strange, furrows or avenues of story. I think the my main issues with it that prevented me from giving it a 5 star um, were possibly, I think, Robert Jordan's writing. Some of it excellent, other parts of it kind of like I think he needed to read it back to himself. Um, and he has an interesting way of writing women. Um, I think must have met a woman at some point. Clearly, he's spoken to one at least once, but there's some strange things going on there. And so yeah, I think that's roughly what first impressions. I think the story is probably the strongest and most well told of the three as well. So yeah, that's a very brief thought.
Matt, why don't you go next, and I'll finish us up.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so I would agree with Ross. This is the strongest of the first three. I think I can't remember exactly what I rated the first. But I think it was 3.5, 3.5, and maybe 3.75. This is probably touching the four. So it's definitely the stronger of the three. I think I enjoyed. The story progressed better than the previous two, and the pacing felt a bit better to me than the previous two. I agree on the language, and the use of descriptions is interesting. We'll probably get more into the spoiler discussion on that bit, but there's quirks to the way he writes that are infuriating, and they do sort of just occasionally just tick me the wrong way when I'm reading it, going like this was unnecessary. But I think that's something you'll have to get used to in the series. I'm not sure that's going to change, and there's, as I say, I think the structure. I think there's a very interesting choice about the focus of which characters we focus on, and I quite enjoyed the choices he made in that. Without going into too much detail on that, I quite enjoyed how he told the story of the Dragon Reborn, how he actually told that story and the people he chose to tell it, which I thought worked really well. I think some of the characters we've seen a bit of development in them, which I liked and enjoyed, and I think it's interesting the dynamics between the group changing over the 3 books. I think that worked well. I still think, really think hard not to give away spoilers, but I still think, like the first 2, I still think the ending lacked a little. And I would have to explain that more in spoiler discussion. But I just don't think it was better, but it was lacking a little bit, something for that sort of finale. But the progress to that point was much better told. So it's a better book. There's still challenging issues for my enjoyment that get in the way of me giving it anything more than probably a 4 at this point.
So as you guys know, I gave it a 5 out of 5. A perfect book. No, I think I'm a little bit more generous with my ratings. Always have been. And for me, I enjoyed this book like literally front to back. Like you say, the choice of POVs and narrators, I found really refreshing. So I think that you could get. I mean, if you had been binging this series, I think The Dragon Reborn would have been a really, really nice change of pace. Also, it's a bit shorter, I think, than the previous 2, and
Didn't feel like it.
no.
No, that's it.
Well, I binge read it in like 5 days, but yeah. So I think I'm higher on this series than Matt anyway. In that I thought that The Great Hunt was like, I think I rounded The Great Hunt up to a 5 because I don't do half measures, so I was like, it's better than a 4, so I rounded it to a 5, and I've done the same. Not the same for Dragon Reborn. Is more like it's basically a 5, apart from a few small quibbles that I had, which is repetitive phrasing in description. Laura joined us for a quick chat before the call and complained about tugging on braids and folding arms under breasts. And I absolutely agree. Both of those things are like, whenever you spot them, it's kind of like, oh, time to take a drink. And
You would get smashed. That is a dangerous drinking game. That is.
Apparently there's this complete side tangent. If you watch the Lord of the Rings extended edition, Ian McKellen does a commentary, and one of the drinking games that you can play is to drink every time he says Tolkien, and apparently you will be 20 drinks in within 6 minutes. So there you go. But
I think a good drinking game to play on Lord of the Rings with me would be drink every time I say something about the filming of a certain scene. Oh, that's where
he stubbed his toe.
Where he broke his toe, or where that's where Sam, was his face cut his foot. Yeah, no, that would be it. That would also get you completely hammered. I'm drinking 0% today, by the way. Just
I'm drinking Aldi Diet Cola.
Well, I've gone for the full drink today. I've got a nice Italian red wine for me to see.
Oh,
I was about to pour myself a drink, and then I was like, "Oh, do you know what? Actually, I'll save myself. I'm going on 2 stag do's this month." So I also thought the ending was a little bit rushed, not as rushed as the previous 2, but yeah, a little bit. That was my big feeling for the ending. While we're talking about the ending, should we just slide straight into the spoiler zone? So, for everyone watching, we're now full spoiler, no holds barred for the first 3 books of the Wheel of Time. So, I asked you guys when you started reading if you knew the gimmick or the thing with the Dragon Reborn. So I knew up front that Rand was only in 2% of this book, but neither of you guys, when I asked you, knew. So, and like you said, Matt, you found that to be quite enjoyable.
Yeah, I thought it was. I think one, it's a bold choice for books 1 and 2. Rand is I don't know what percentage of the books he makes up, but it's the vast majority of those first 2 books is his perspective. Certainly the first book and the second book, I'd say it's probably still over 50%.
I'll find it for you.
I'm going to say the data somewhere. The third book is literally entitled The Dragon Reborn, which is Rand. It's his title, and we just don't see him. We see it all from other people's perspective. So it's quite a bold choice from a a narrative point of view, and I can't think of any other of that era sort of fantasy books that would have made or have made that a similar choice, where actually they decided to pull away from the perceived main character of the series to tell it from the others or within the group and build on them. And I thought it worked really well. And I think the bits we see of Rand, which are really, really small, even where we see of him from other people actually seeing him, is not actually in the book a huge amount. And we still get a lot of what is going on with him. We get enough of what is going on with him, and the whole dream reality and Dark Friends and all the battles that he is internally, externally facing. But I felt we get a lot more because we see it from other people's viewpoint, and we see what they're seeing. We start to understand their view of Rand and the Dragon Reborn and what it means for the world and for them within it.
I really, really liked it. Just to give you the stats, so in Either World, Rand is 80% of the POVs, and in The Great Hunt, Rand is 53%, which I actually thought
just over half
was higher. I have to say, I thought he had more page time than that in The Great Hunt, but obviously I'm wrong. But yeah, he has 2.53%, 2.4% of the Dragon Reborn. And it's basically split three ways. So Egwene has the most page time. She has 33%. Perrin has 31%, and Matt has 26%.
I've got to be honest, languishing. Going back through the last two, so in the first book, the character that annoyed me the most was Matt, and in the second book, the character that annoyed me the most was Rand. So I was not disappointed at all that Rand was only in 2.5% of this book, because I kind of mentioned earlier some of the choices that the characters made in those two previous books really annoyed me. Just everything involving Rand and Selene was just like the most frustrating thing ever in The Great Hunt. So I was quite pleased not to spend too much time with him. I mean, I'm sure, as he matures, as he grows into his role, that he might become less annoying. But pleasantly, I was quite pleased that Matt was considerably less annoying in this book, and actually turned out to be one of the best parts of it. Wasn't expecting that. Was not expecting that at all.
Yeah, I think we've basically pinned our brand on the fact that we think that Matt is terrible in the previous two videos. And Matt came out of this book as 100% my favorite POV in this. My favorite moment in this book is a Matt chapter. It's actually from quite near the end, when Matt is looking at the sheer wall of the Stone of Tyr, and he's like, not even Rand would be stupid enough to climb that. And then the next thing you see is Rand climbing the Stone of Tyr. But also, so the interesting thing about Rand, and I got this from Tutor Ramble's podcast. I don't know if you guys watched any of them. So they've done the first 3 Wheel of Time books the same as we have. And in the first book, one of the guys on the pod is like, Rand keeps making these stupid decisions, and the other guy's a huge Wheel of Time fan, and he's like, well, the thing is, Rand is slowly going insane because he's a male who can channel. So a lot of his decisions are he's kind of unhinged, and also his Two Rivers stubbornness, combined with that being unhinged, is well, I think I can climb this sheer wall.
I mean, that's an interesting explanation for it. Perhaps considering what there are 13 books in this series or something like that, that he could have. I don't know what happens after this, but if he's slowly going insane, it's actually quite a pace.
I think you see it a little bit in some of his POV chapters in this, because he's got one POV chapter in the middle of the book, doesn't he? Or a short, a couple of paragraphs in the middle of the book where it does feel like he is going insane.
I mean, he is. Yeah, his insanity is clearly there now. In book 3, it's clearly there. Like but you can sort of, again, I think because we see the different perspective, we see that not only is he dealing with the fact that coming to terms that he is a dragon reborn, and the dragon reborn basically is the world breaker and will kill everyone he loves through the madness. But then also, like, even when in his sleep he goes in the dream world, he's surrounded by enemies, and enemies coming to him with the faces of friends, and he can't distinguish who is who. And to the extent, I think it may be that middle chapter as well, where there's this he's like made a little file or something, and people turn up and he just like kills them all, and you're like, yeah, okay, it probably was baddies. But I'm not 100% sure. And isn't there a point where he gets like dead people to bow down to him, and like there's all like his steps to insanity have rapidly increased in this book, or seemingly from the outside. Again, we don't see his perspective huge amount, but he is definitely on that way. And I think, Ross, just going to your point about Celine and his choices around Celine, what I really liked about the difference between Rand and Matt was when Matt had his interaction at the beginning with the Amelin seat and Lanfear, who we knew was Lanfear. He was like, he didn't sort of fall. Yeah, he went, yeah, she's beautiful, because that's basically the description we get of her. But he went, yeah, but they're both trying to use me, and I want to look out for number one. That's me. And I like Matt's like, number one is most important, and yeah, I'll help out if I can, but let's look after Matt before we look after anybody else.
Yeah. It's the kind of thing you'd find really annoying in a person in real life. Actually, it makes his character so much more interesting.
Yeah.
And reduces the frustration or maybe counteracts some of the frustration that we felt with him previously. He made some strange choices in especially in the first book. But yeah, he kind of really comes into his own in this one.
Yeah, I think I left this book with Matt being 100% my favorite character in this book. And I don't think I laughed out loud at either of the two, The Great Hunt or The Eye of the World. But this one, there were genuinely a couple of jokes that I was like, oh, Robert Jordan's actually quite funny. He's got like good subtle humour.
They're definitely. I was also surprised at that. It was almost like a Marvel kind of, like a serious story with a couple of jokes in there, which I didn't dislike. I thought that was quite good.
I liked. There's a great joke at the end where Matt has got all the girls out of the prison cell, and he's like, "Well, you guys can't go back in there. That's where all the evil people are." And they're like, "Well, we're gonna go back in there." And he's like, well, don't expect me to follow you. And then the other guy's like, where are you going? He's like, well, I'm following them, obviously.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of like, really, like, a lot of like, oh, well, I have to do this. This is dumb. Like, I like a lot of stuff going on. With Matt. It just like, also, he's a good counterpoint to like incredibly dour, horrible, but down on his luck Tom Merrilin, who he spends a lot of the book with. I feel like every time Tom Merrilin turns up, he's worse off.
He's not having a great time of things, is he?
When he turns up in The Great Hunt, he's got his limp, hasn't he? And then like
he turns up in The Great Hunt. To be fair, he turns up. Yeah, he's got a limp, but his life is pretty good. And when these group of Tavarem turn up to destroy his life again, it's like, actually, he's got a pretty good life in The Great Hunt. He's like making a bit of money. He's got someone who loves him, who he loves, who he's training up. It's just like, and then that just gets destroyed when, Rand and Co show up in his life again and just wreck his life. And then, it doesn't get much better for him, to be honest.
I'm looking forward to seeing where they go with Tom in future books, just because, like, what worse could happen to him? Is he going to have a turnaround here?
Well, I assume there's going to be a him and the Queen coming face to face at some point in this series, because I mean that's my assumption. There seems to be a lot of sort of foreshadowing of that relationship being the critical juncture in Tom's life that sent him fleeing to the hills.
Yeah,
and
obviously the Queen being my theory, Moraine's sister, younger sister. That's my theory. Pieced together from very small bits of discussion in these books. I really want to look it up because I really want to know, but I'm like, no, I'm going to be sensible. So while we're on characters, well, let's carry on. So what were your guys' favorite characters, favorite moments from this one, Ross?
Well, yeah, we touched on Matt. I do think Matt is very strong in this book and very, very enjoyable. I think you kind of touched on this I think when we were chatting about, well, when you were mentioning your progress on Discord, Sam, about Matt's magic luck and how exploitable that is. Like if you could pick any character to award with magic luck, out of these folks, it would probably be him. And that really did create some fantastic moments where he was sort of like tested the boundaries of that luck and kind of gradually learned the like the parameters and the limitations of it. I think my favorite moment of that was the fact that they randomly showed up at where the three girls were in tier, like right from the right as soon as they landed, and then they were like, no, they wouldn't be here. And again, another great comedy moment. There's like, no, there's no chance they'd be here, and then had to circle back to it. I thought that whole bit was really clever and probably the most enjoyable kind of twist on a fantasy formula there. That was really good. Are we just talking about favorite? Because I definitely have
anyone really.
I have a least favorite as well, but I don't know if you're saving that one.
Oh no, go for it. Let us know.
I got to be honest. I think in this book, Perrin was insufferable. I found him really annoying. What is it with like all these the three I forgot what the word is now, but you know,
Tavaren.
That Tavaren, yeah, that's it. What is it with those three just like swapping places of being the most annoying? I was not a huge fan of Perrin's character development in this one, and just how whiny he is throughout this whole book. I hate complaining about whininess, but you know, it really did feel like he needed to just kind of accept the way of the, you know, like, you know, come on, man. This is like your situation is not that bad. I mean, it's pretty bad, but it's not that bad. Come on, you know. Anyway,
I think a lot of his character development for me was like when he's kind of refusing to kill, and he's like, well, like, I don't want to do violence. Like he's kind of leaning down that pacifist road, maybe influenced by the what are they called, Tinkers, that he meets in book one. But yeah, I thought that was quite interesting, and obviously how it's very at odds with his like gotta hunt, gotta kill wolf blood. And I thought it was cool to see the wolf guy at the beginning who's gone like full wolf.
Yeah,
but yeah, obviously that guy's going to come back. Like that has to be a thing.
Is it Hopper?
No, the
that's the wolf, isn't it? No, you're talking about in the village where the wolf man, the other guy. Was it the
there's another
boys?
wolf brother who's kept in a stable.
To put it in perspective, it had been literally, I read The Great Hunt about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. So there's I had to do a lot of reread. So I'm going to make mistakes on some of these words.
That's right. We make mistakes, and we read it last month. So
yeah, I know. I was thinking, like, is Hopper a wolf?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Hopper was a wolf who died.
Strange name for a wolf, but anyway, yeah.
So yeah,
so
carry on, Matt.
Sorry, go on. Yeah, I was gonna say like I'm gonna be opposite to you, Ross. Let's start the battle now. So
yeah,
Perrin was actually one of my preferred characters from this book.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I think there's a couple of things. One is he there's an interesting comparison between him and Rand, and I think this is maybe why you get the whingy element, is that, and this is where the boys are different from the girls in this book and in the series so far, is that you've got Perrin and Rand who are both on a journey of they are magical in whatever term you want to use that. So you've got Rand Dragon Reborn, you've got Perrin, who's the Wolf Brother, and this developing that, but they see themselves as alone and with no support, and and the fear of the unknown in that sense, but also the lure of it. So they're both having that the pull, and everybody in this book has that pull. So Elaine, Egwene, and Nynaeve also has the pull of the one power, the desire to enwrap themselves in the one power as well. And Perrin has the desire to sort of fall into that wolf, and there's a bit at the beginning where they have that big fight in the mountains. The wolves come in, and he sort of becomes very wolf-like and is just ripping people to shreds and howling, and everyone else sort of takes a step back and just sort of looks at him curiously. And Rand has the sort of similar avenue where he is sort of alone. He can use side-in, and he can use the male half of the power, and therefore that sort of isolates him from everyone else, and no one can really teach him how to use it, because only men can teach men to use the male side, and women can teach women to male side. And that's sort of that separation and isolation, yet they're going through similar things in a different avenue. As yet, what's interesting with the three women then, so Nynaeve, Elaine, and Egwene, is they're going through the same thing, but they're together as a group, so they have that instant support network. And like Min is this, and she doesn't have much of this in this book at all, but she's sort of this sort of go-between between Perrin and the girls. And what's interesting to me with the Perrin story is that he is especially at the end, he is the only one that prioritizes something beyond the Dragon Reborn. That's real to him. As everybody else goes to the stone, he's the only one that doesn't go to the stone. He prioritized something over that. And that relationship's obviously going to develop with the Falcon as we move forward. But that was an interesting for me, an interesting character choice, where he decides to do something different. Everyone else is drawn to Rand and what's Rand doing, but Perrin is actually able to separate himself off from it. And then we've seen the risks, with, as you say, with the other person who has become completely feral wolf bound, and even Moraine was basically, well, I can't do anything. He is beyond help now, and just let him into the wild and be a wolf, basically. So there is that risk side to it as well. So I didn't have the same frustrations. There's still like the elements of it where it is, just there are people who can support you. I mean, we know he met one of them in the first book. Elias. So there is other people out there who can support him in this, and Rand doesn't actually have anybody. But I think there's an interesting storyline. I think also I quite like where we had, so when we in the first book we had the Nynaeve and Lan sort of came out of the blue to me of their sort of connection. It was interesting seeing the Perrin, and all I can think of her name is the Falcon, but I know it's not actually her name, but Zareen?
Fael, I think.
Yeah, Fael, but
She has
Zareen.
3 different names, doesn't she?
Yeah, exactly. That's what
Just
confuses
to
me
confuse
more.
things.
But that connection you can sort of see developing, and then like the bit where he's in the blacksmith, sort of just clearing his head and using his strength in that, but actually in a creative outlet, and her watching him, etc., and that building of relationships. So that was better for me in sort of appreciating that. So Perrin for me is one of my preferred characters, and Matt I enjoyed because he was actually a character in this book rather than just an annoying lump that they had to drag around and stop telling everybody, giving away all their secrets. So he was an improvement, and I quite enjoyed with him. I enjoyed the sort of right at the beginning where we've got the initial where he challenges Galad and Gawain to their little fight, and he's got a stick and he just uses luck and beats the crap out of them both, 2 trained fighters, and just puts them both on their backside. And I was like, and suddenly your perspective of Matt and everybody's perspective of Matt just changes. And then that happens again at the end of the book where Moraine basically lets everybody know that he is the one that blew the horn of Valir, and you can see the three others look at him differently at that point, that he has this role to play within it. So there's 2 points from that story. But yeah, so probably a bit different. I quite enjoyed the Perrin storyline in this one.
Well, I just want to say, Matt, that that's a very intelligent analysis and far more insightful than my. I thought he was whiny, so thank you for sharing it. That has given me food for thought. I think I hadn't picked up on that whole kind of the fact that Perrin's goal is different to everyone else's, and obviously, like, you do pick up on his. It's not really, it's over the elements of him trying to like moderate the influence of this power that he has, but the idea of him doing it alone compared to the girls was, I didn't think about that at all, and I think that's really interesting what you're saying there.
Yeah, it's just different. I think it's also and also with the interesting with the Matt and the girls. I think what was interesting to me is that dynamic, because we had a couple of instances where they were together, and it's also the sort of the lack of trust between the two. I know, Sam, you and I have spoken about previously about matriarchy and patriarchy and where the power lies within the Wheel of Time, and to me, it's very much a matriarchal led, or most societies are matriarchal led, or seemingly so, and that's where the power lies. But Matt is very much still of the opinion that it is sort of male led society, or he gives that impression of it, as I think from the previous book, like Rand started to realize that actually it is a matriarchal society. When we went to the steading, and like L'Oreal was worried about getting married off and saying about that the women would marry him off, and like Rand was like, well, that's sort of the man's decision, it's like, and then it's also thinking about what actually happened to him and Egwene, and how like it was Egwene's mum who was sort of setting the wheels in motion, and like they sort of decided, and it was actually the women who were driving that decision rather than the men, and where that power lies. And I think it was interesting that you've got those group of three who are close and together and have their own little internal squabbles, but are in the end supporting each other. And Matt is still was the outsider, and even though they're from, well, 3 of the 4 from the 2 rivers, he was still very much the outsider, to such an extent where their sort of first interaction with him, he's like, "Oh, great, my friends have come to see me, and I'm getting better, and I'm healed, I'm feeling good, and I want to get out, but I'm trapped in the city." And they're sort of trying to almost manipulate him to do what they want him to do, rather than one checking he's all right, and I know they're doing that as well, but the priority is sort of manipulating to what they want to do, rather than just asking him what they want him to do. There's sort of the power dynamic of who has the knowledge and where the knowledge lies. And then at the end of the book, where he does his heroics and saves them, and then their response to that is really, really interesting. That it's not, it's obviously a very different response to what he's expecting. And we can sort of understand why, but the response is not a positive one, let's put it that way, to his involvement in their escape.
While we're on the topic of the ladies, as it were, so Egwene actually has the most POV, the most page time in this book, and I thought that the way that that Jordan is dealing with her PTSD from the slavery at the end of Great Hunt was really well done. I think that in the first couple of books, the conflict for Egwene has been kind of like, oh, I'm scared of becoming I'm scared of losing everyone from home by becoming an Aes Sedai, but she kind of knew what she was doing. Like, she wants to become the Aes Sedai. She doesn't want to be in the 2 rivers. She's like, oh, I might not see my parents again at some point. But now she's like, I will not be in chains ever again. And I was like, that's a really interesting way for her to, like, that's a great piece of character development, that Jordan has put on her. But it also gives her that like thing to that like fight and rally against, which I thought was really interesting, and also kind of separating them from all the other Aes Sedai by being like, well, anyone you meet and talk to and befriend could be evil, so good luck. And I thought that a lot of that, like both of those two things for Egwene, made for a really interesting journey for her in this book, and also her, dream shit. I think Ross, did you message me like, "There's a lot of dream shit going on in this book," and I was like, "Yep."
Yeah, I figured we'd talk about that.
Keeps
in a minute.
going.
That's definitely a key point for sure. I mean, both Egwene and Perrin have lots of dreams to dream, and it's interesting that so much of the book happens in dreams, which is kind of, I guess, when you've had two very kind of events driven plots, things are happening, things are, the characters need to get from A to B, need to do various things, to have a book that kind of really exploits the dream state as like a metaphorical, like it's a bit of a trope, but it's a really useful trope, like being able to say things through pictures that then will crystallize and make sense as the plot develops, and doing that in dreams where things are more metaphorical, kind of, I found it interesting that as Egwene is going through Tyr in the dream state, where she's like, oh, so of course, no one would ever dream about being in a prison, so that's that's an interesting kind of use of that. I don't know where I was going with that, but I do think that is interesting to, on your third book to kind of really get a bit twisty with your storytelling devices and start to kind of plant some ideas in the readers' heads that you can then take advantage of later. Yeah, those were some thoughts.
I think, is this the one where we see Egwene's test as well to become accepted?
Yeah.
And I really like that one. I think, but both of the test chapters that we've got have been excellent. And I think that Egwene's was made interesting in terms of, it's like, oh, it's not just a rehash of what we've seen before with Nynaeve, because she also has the Ter Angreal with her, and then there's the other Aes Sedai in the room who might be sabotaging it. So that kind of added that extra wrinkle of interest for me. But yeah, I loved the tests. I could read multiple of these. I'm almost sad we didn't get Elaine's one, because I'd love to see what's going on with Elaine. She often is like the quietest member of the group, but also the smartest. Because Nynaeve's like, I'm gonna do everything I want, and no one can tell me what to do, and like Egwene's like, I won't be chained up again, and Elaine's like, maybe we could just like go out this side door and avoid everyone.
On the tests, it's actually a really, I mean, I agree with you. It's a really, really effective storytelling technique to reveal, the most inner fears / desires of a character. In fact, this is a good tip for anyone who plays D&D who is a DM. Contriving a way to get your characters to share their worst memory or whatever. Like my friend did this. He DM'd a game with us and got us all to sort of like imagine what would be the worst memory of all our characters or greatest fear or whatever, and then we just played those scenes out in this contrived way, and the depth it gave to all of our characters is only seeing like what those moments were. It's a great storytelling device, and I just think it is genius. There's no other way to put it. It's really effective.
And I think also the rebellion against those dreams, because I think me and Matt have talked a lot in previous kind of episodes of the spoiler chat, that basically every character has like a real conflict at their core, where it's like Rand just wants to be normal, but he's special. Egwene wants to be special, but she kind of feels this pull back home. But then we're also seeing in these dreams, she's like, oh, these are the things she really wants to happen. But she's also, in many of them, she's being shown why they would be awful. Like the one with Ran, or is it Ran's dream, where this might be from the Great Hunt actually, where he imagines being married to her with a baby, and then the Trollocs attack. Or is that in this one? I can't remember.
So Egwene has, one of her tests is her and Rand have a baby who is called Joya. I know there's also, because she shares a name with one of the Black Aja, doesn't she? So
yeah.
And then I don't think Trollocs attack in that dream. I think it's a case of Rand has got is still struggling with the power. He has like massive headaches and then collapses, and then Tam, his dad's coming back, and Egwene has to head towards the door because the door doesn't close. I do like the tests. I do really enjoy the going up to the acceptance, and hopefully we'll get what Elaine's was. I think that would be interesting. I think one thing on that front is I was curious because both the ones we've had, their biggest fear was the loss of potential future families. Now, I mean, we mentioned very briefly about his descriptions of women and females, but it was an interesting point that actually both of them, so like for Nynaeve in the previous book, it was, Lan and them having a child. And for Egwene, it was Rand and them having a child. And I can't remember if that was actually her third test or second one. But, there's a sort of a theme there that actually that is, if Elaine's is similar, it does make you sort of question, going back to your point, Ross, of Jordan's view of women in society and what their main focus is, or perhaps it should be. But it was just an interesting point. So I think Elaine's will be interesting. I think Elaine is, and it's interesting to see the dynamics between the three of them shifting from Nynaeve being the wisdom and, of the village and the older one, and, used to people listening to her getting away and bullying people to do what she wants them to do. Because that's what she used to in the village. She used to bully the council to do what the women's council wanted to do, enforce her will. And obviously, Egwene's had this incredibly traumatic experience, and that gives her the trauma of it, but also the iron resolve that it won't happen to her again, and she is changing her view, and they're also now all accepted. So Nynaeve pulling rank or pulling seniority on them is grating, and that sort of dynamic between Egwene and Nynaeve sort of becoming loggerheads of Nynaeve not feeling she has to explain everything because she feels she's right, and Egwene going, hang on a minute, we're all in this together, let's put it together and work together. And then Elaine going, yeah, but Egwene, you're also being an idiot. Like, you've got to just pull yourself together as well and stop just fighting everyone around you just for the sake of fighting it. When Nynaeve says something and it is the right thing to do, let's do the right thing. Let's not just fight over it because she didn't explain it. The world is at risk here. Elaine has certainly got the smarts, and that comes, presumably from her upbringing, being heir, and the exposure she's had rather than these two individuals who lived very insular, rural lives and haven't seen much of the world until these events have started.
I think I just noticed the cover with, obviously the original cover with Rand and the lightsaber in the sky, the glowing sword. I was just thinking to myself, like, oh, wait a second.
It's a great cover.
It is good, and it's a sword in a stone, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's blooming Camelot.
Absolutely.
I didn't even think about it. I've read this whole book. Although my cover was a bit less exciting. It's these lovely photo covers that I do enjoy, but the artwork is not anywhere near as inspiring. So, should we move on and talk a little bit about kind of how this book ends up for you guys. I think we've done some good character stuff. In fact, maybe world building elements. So the things that I thought were really interesting were the grey men,
Yeah.
like people who are so boring that you can't that they don't get noticed. I was like, that's such a cool idea. Like they've kind of had all the like interestingness sucked out of them, and so you just kind of don't see them. I was like, that's a really cool idea.
Yeah, it reminded me of like the sort of the perfect spy. I don't know if you read any they're completely off topic, but John le Carre, any of his spy novels. But what like you get like your your James Bond is sort of the typical spy, but John le Carre's spies are just really ordinary people that you wouldn't look at twice. They are your typical, and obviously, hopefully, they have souls, but they're the people just disappear in the background that you don't, and that's what you want from your spies. You don't want them to be visible or noticed. You don't want them in the flashy cars and pulling all the women and causing lots of trouble. You want them gathering intelligence and doing their job quietly and swiftly. So I think the Grey Men, I quite enjoyed that sort of soulless element that they just disappear and can therefore slip through unnoticed almost anywhere.
Yeah,
So,
I thought they were really interesting, and they're people. They used to be people, aren't they? But they give their souls over to the Dark One, so that they can. And once they lose their souls, they are easy to. They're very hard to spot. So yeah,
but then,
really enjoyed that like whole idea, and I feel like every book Jordan is adding like one or two super interesting things to the world building, and this was like one of my favorites in this one. I also like the Aiel as well.
Mm.
I thought that
and
like
what? Sorry, go on.
oh Karen, I was just gonna say I thought they were great.
Yeah, they were, and what I liked. So a couple of things on that. So the IEL, I really enjoyed. I enjoyed how we saw them through the book, like popping up every so often at certain points. We got little glimpses, and then we get the bit where, they rescue one from the trap in the village and release them, and then we get the release. And we also we don't get much of Moraine in this book, but what we get is quite impressive. But also we see the gaps in their knowledge as well, that they're not all knowing, and that they, that Moraine, there's a bit where Moraine's talking about that she knows all the prophecies and there is no Aiel in the prophecies, yet the Aiel have their own prophecy that they are the army of the dragon, the people of the dragon. And that gap in knowledge of where this comes from is quite fascinating and works quite well, I thought.
I like somebody I saw a TikTok the other day that was like, is Robert Jordan ripping off Dune? Are Aiel just Fremen? And I was like, there's a lot of similarities, and the person in the thing is like, no, there are a lot of similarities, but they're both basically using the same trope, which is white guilt over oppressing these like Middle Eastern cultures and making them super cool because our culture is kind of feels guilty about suppressing them. I thought that was
That's
very
so
interesting.
That's very well observed.
Yeah. Elizabeth something. She's got a great Elizabeth Wheatley, I think. She has a good YouTube Shorts presence for fantasy books.
Okay.
But I love the culture and the style. Like the short spears was cool. I like there's a bit where they're walking around Tyr, and Lan is like, by the way, I've just seen Aiel on the roof.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it's just cool. They're just like Batman. They're just walking on the rooftops, silent ninjas.
Yeah, and then we get the bit where Matt is trying to break in and they just appear, and then I've forgotten the other guy's name, the thief taker appears.
Julian.
And then
it's not actually Julian, but it's basically Julian.
Yeah, something like that.
Julian
and then
Sandar.
Julian Sandar.
And then like another half a dozen IE will just pop up out of the shadows to surround him as well. Like, yeah. Because I think Land's comment is there's definitely some IE, and I've seen like 3 or 4, which means there's a lot more that I haven't seen.
I love that comment. We don't. Ever since book 1, we've not had enough Lan, but like every time he's on page, he says something. He like says or does something cool. So you've got to give it to him.
Yeah, but he's also having like. There's also little bits in this one that we don't see much of him, but him and Moraine, but him seemingly challenging Moraine a lot more than the previous books, and whether there's been a sort of a shift or whether it's just moved on to Paige. There's been a shift where she said in book 2 where she goes, well, basically when I die, I'm passing you on to this other Aes Sedai, and that sort of saving him is now he's sort of now in the process where actually, you're staying alive and you're not going in there alone because I'm not being passed on to anybody else as in servitude. So there's certainly a sort of dynamic there that seems to have shifted from my perspective when I read it.
Did any of you guys have any other cool like world building stuff that you really enjoyed? I mean, I did like the dreams, and dreams being almost like another plane of existence, and obviously we've travelled to another plane in the previous, like multiversally, we've travelled to another plane in the Great Hunt. So the dream world being something, and also like wolves being able to access it, I thought was quite interesting, which gives like Perrin this way to enter these dream worlds as well.
I mean, yeah, who doesn't love wolves that can fly in dreams? I mean, that is pretty cool. Yeah, I think the dream world, I enjoyed the dream world. I think one thing I did enjoy about this book and the world building was actually that something that didn't happen is that everyone travelled normally, other than the dreams. We didn't suddenly end up with this piece 2/3 of the book, which means that we could travel hundreds of miles in a day magically, either through the ways or through these alternative portal stones. Actually, everyone just took a boat.
Yeah.
Right. I just felt more comfortable. It felt like he'd brought the story together more naturally in that sense, rather than to sort of force this alternative dimension on us to make it work.
There was a point when they had 3 separate boats with 3 different captains, and you were like, so what was so that captain was annoyed with that captain was a good but that's the one, that's the ship where they're feeling seasick, and is it the big boat or the small boat? It did get a little bit confusing there, but I agree with you, Matt, that like getting to travel via regular means was, you get to see a bit more of the landscape. I
did like
I think
the Great Hunt when they travelled by portal stone and they lost months of time, and that enabled Jordan to have had Egwene under slavery for several months, which obviously sucks for Egwene, but like I thought that it gave us an interesting way to push the story on that didn't feel massively rushed. While I do feel that the endings of all 3 books have been faster and more rushed than I would have liked, and I think we can rely on Brandon Sanderson to come in and finish off with some very good endings for the final books, because that's kind of his speciality. But
I mean, that's quite a way away yet, Sam.
Yeah, we're only 11 books from reading the final book, so easy. One of them's shorter, apparently.
Yeah, time and length is relative, I think.
Yeah. So I think I like the travel. Sometimes I like traveling by map versus walking somewhere. But I do like the idea that Rand basically walked from one half of the country to the other, like going a bit mad and killing people. That was quite fun.
Yeah, and I'd also liked how his sort of impact on the world around him, how he the weaving of the fabric around him, how weird things happen, like everybody suddenly gets married when he appears in one town, etc., and this sort of impact he has on the world around him. And I think from a world building point of view, it's something I like and also dislike about Wheel of Time, which we haven't really discussed, is the fact that fate and destiny is literally woven into the fabric of the book, and Min's a prime example, and what she sees can't be changed. It is what it is, and she doesn't always understand it, but it will happen. And and there's sort of this. It's clever in a sense. It's clever how he's written that. Actually, it's sort of the wheel that time repeats and history repeats, and it's another cycle of something that's happened. What we're supposed to be in the third age, so it's the third cycle around, or whatever. It's been thousands of years, but we continue to repeat the same of what we've repeated before. And there's sort of, I suppose, quite an interesting view of time and history, but it also is, my concern is that it sort of narrows what can actually happen, because the story has already been written and we're just repeating it again and again and again. And that leads to, one is it's sort of a clever and useful plot armor device, where actually the ways will weave in a certain way to protect who it needs to protect and whatever else. But also that means that there's a lot of coincidences that happen where you're just like, it just happens. So, and what I mean by that is, it takes time. I was like, Matt's incredible amount of luck is a really interesting point, but also, I mean, it's a very useful get out clause of pretty much anything. Nynaeve and Egwene's ability with the one power and being able to do stuff, see it once, do it, even if they've not really seen it, it just happened to them. They can then suddenly do it. We've got Egwene like weaving like 3 different streams of power at the end of the book without breaking a sweat. It was really easy for her, and she'd never done it before. The teams, sometimes it feels, I think this is why it's not a 5-star, it feels a little convenient. I think I spoke about this about the first time when we spoke about the first book, The Eye of the World, and like, I love magic and I love the use of magic, but I do get concerned that magic can become a click your fingers and the problem solved. And occasionally I feel it's, and this sounds a little bit stupid, but it's a little too easy. Like, things, when they need them, come a little too easy, and that's sort of partly written into the way the story is, and the fact that it is a wheel and it's repeating. But it doesn't, I suppose, it doesn't feel the same level of threat to it. The characters, in a sense, feel safe. That doesn't mean, I suppose, not safe from harm, because obviously we've seen Egwene, and harm can certainly undertake them, but there's not the same level of mortal risk, I feel, when I read this book. I think that's why it doesn't have the same impact of what would be a 5-star read for me. I think that's one of the core bits that...
I do know what you mean, yeah. I think...
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be like much tangible cost to the one power, like at least through the female form like is a nature, it's a natural, it's a thing about like high magic fantasy, where like the magic is kind of as wide as your creativity could be. So I mean, it's perhaps that's simplifying things a bit too much for the world of time here, because there clearly are rules, but when you have a clear magic system, as you would in a Sanderson book, for example, you can't necessarily just pull the rabbit out of the hat with your magic. You have a set of rules that you have to contrive within those rules. And like, even just like the way that I think Moraine randomly worked out how to use balefire or whatever it is, like at the end, that is kind of like, oh right, so that perhaps it wasn't quite kind of didn't really see much cost to that one, or like now she just can do this. Like it's a strange, I totally get what you mean, Matt. It is does feel a touch contrived, and to have these things happen to the characters.
So
I'm talking about sorry,
I'd
about the contrivance bit. It works. What works, like, then you got the just to flip it, that we can have contrivance and clever work within a system within this book. Is you take the Aes Sedai still, the fact that they take the oath on this, the 3 that they can't tell a lie and stuff like that, and how they then contrive to not necessarily tell the truth.
I love
so
that.
He can, like, Jordan can do that, and the way he writes, he can actually, he has the ability to put limits on what can be done, and then expand within those boundaries, and and play with them in a sense. And I think that works really well. And the whole fact that we've got the Black Hyja within the Aes Sedai, and they're able to be within without lying, and survive, and in a sense multiply within that is really clever. So he certainly has the ability to do it. I just feel the magic system is something I want to understand more, and I like the fact we've got different elements to it, and I like the Aes Sedai. They have the different factions within it who have different focuses of what they work towards and what they work on, and their place within the tower and society. And I like all that. It just feels a little, and it's not just about the magic, but it just feels a little bit occasionally contrived to just this is. And it kind of this is kind of the point of the book as well, I suppose. It is the way things will be, because this is the path it has to take. This is what the prophecy is forsaken. Rand is the dragon reborn. He was born in the mountain, and he will break the world. We're not. I don't think we're necessarily going to break this cycle, but it's just it has its storytelling pitfalls for me. I think is what I'm trying to get to.
I think the thing that I'm enjoying about it, I think that with the way I look at it, almost is like this is like a coloring picture, like a kid's coloring book, and what we're seeing Jordan is like, well, yes, this is what I expect the picture to look like, but it's how he's coloring it in, if that makes sense, and how he's telling the story. So I'm like, I have no fear that Rand will die, mostly because he's on the cover for the final book, but also like I don't feel that fear for really any of the characters.
Well, there's a book 15 spoiler already there.
Yeah, but the well, there's somebody with red hair and a heron marked sword on the front of the final book. Whoever it could be, you never know. But he doesn't look like he's from the Two Rivers. But I'm not worried about any of the characters, but I'm liking like you say, there are some consequences for some of the actions, but currently the only consequence we're really seeing for the magic stuff is that obviously for the women, they get addicted to channeling and they want to channel all the time, which I thought was really interesting. I think that's a really good way to give that negative, because like when we look at things like softer magic systems, so like for example Constantine's from the Hellblazer comics, his whole thing is like every spell you cast has a cost, and it can be a sacrifice, it can be personal, it can be horrible, whereas then you see stuff like in Wheel of Time, it's more like a mental cost, and obviously the men are going slowly insane and the women are getting addicted, which I thought was really quite interesting. Apparently, I saw this in a video that the magic system of the one power and channeling is a hard magic system, but the rules just get explained to you very slowly over the books. So I'm very interested to see when that turns up and what those rules are.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. I'm sure it will be explained.
I want to know how Moraine got big in book 1, where she just suddenly is 17 feet tall or whatever. It's like, this is just funny. Like, why is it just this really big lady?
Yeah. And it's like, you get like little bits like when they're doing healing about what that is mainly spirit, but you have a little bit of air and, a tiny bit of water sort of mixed in, so that, there's a recipe to sort of follow. So, there's definitely a system of sorts. I think it's just, I liked your, the way you're discussing that. It's a colouring in of his view of sort of the Chosen One storyline and how that would play out, I suppose, is quite an interesting way of looking at it. So I do like that.
Does anyone have any final thoughts? I guess we're just hit over the hour. Maybe it's time to talk about the finale and wrap up for the day. So we talked a little bit about how, I mean, I think I said it every time, but the finale felt a bit rushed to me. Um, the finale does have like several of my favorite moments in the book. All of them are like jokey things that Matt does. Uh, the bit when he's like, no sane person would climb that tower, and then you basically instantly switch to Rand being like, and I climbed the tower. Like, that's genuinely hilarious. Like, when that happened, I laughed my ass off at it. I do like, I like the thing also with him and Galad. I forgot to talk about it earlier, but where he's like, he can beat them, but only because he puts money on it. And like, because he's got his, if he hadn't made a bet, he would have lost. But because he
Yeah.
put money on it, he wins. I was like, that's such a funny joke and like contrivance for that character.
Mhm.
But yeah, so we've got the Stone of Tyr and the Aes Sedai band, but the Black Aes Sedai are there because the Samael, one of the Forsaken, who again we have we do not have enough do not have enough info about these Forsaken. They just kind of keep turning up. Um,
Because who do we
and
have now? So we had, because Bilal,
yeah,
but then there
Balsamon
was,
turns out is a Forsaken and is not
yeah,
the Dark One.
yeah, and that was a
Um,
really interesting conversation, like, because that was sort of midway through. There was that bit. I know I messaged you a bit. And again, the dream world. I think Perrin overhears Lanfear and Balsamon chatting, and then I was like, they sound like siblings quarreling
mm,
rather
Mm.
than the Dark Lord and his servant
yeah,
talking. It was very much sibling. I was like, and I think I messaged you. Is Balsamon not the not the Dark Lord? Is this a misnomer? Is he the just another Forsaken?
he's just another Forsaken and Shaitan. Shouldn't probably say his name on the pod, but he's the true Dark One.
So yeah. So but we've got, because we know there's seals being broken, and we know there's a number of them. I think with the ending for me, it was a case that there were some good bits. I like, as I say, the bit with Matt. I like the bits with the fireworks where he shoved them all in the arrow slit and then
That
ran
was
away.
good.
And there was surprise when they all exploded and blew stone out. It was like, what? It looks a little bit wider. Why is there suddenly a hole there? Like, no comprehension of what fireworks actually do. And I quite enjoyed that. And then I think, but for me, and I think, this is going back to the very beginning of this pod, but it was the fact that like Bilal and Balsamon are built up and built up in his books, and they're Forsaken, and we flee Moraine and that flee Ilion because there's a Forsaken. Is it Ilion where another Forsaken is like is now in charge of that area, so they're fleeing,
Mm,
and like there's Forsaken everywhere, but they're built up, and then like they're just dealt with pretty swiftly, like for my personal taste, like
yeah,
you
I'd
know,
like
is
more
it?
time on a finale than this. I think
Yeah,
that's what we're
Mm.
more used to from the current era of fantasy,
yeah,
I
could
would
be, yeah.
say.
It kind of feels like, oh, time to wrap this up. We spend a lot of time telling some plot. That's okay. Yeah, okay. Yes.
He's like, I've written enough pages, now I can end
Yeah.
it. I guess I'll end it here. This one
Yeah,
feels like it has a better structure overall, though, with the like, well, we're all going to Tyr. We're all going to Tyr. We're all going to
Mm.
do this thing in Tyr, which all kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
yeah. And I think from a plotting point of view, this worked a lot better. And I think the fact they all travelled there, different routes, but all sort of arriving there at different times, but getting them all in the same place. And then, it's just, as you said, the ending was swift, sharp, and left me wanting more, which is, I suppose, never a bad thing. But it'd be nice to. I don't know whether we'll ever get it, because it is a 15-book series, and whether we'll get that sort of. I suppose when Sanderson starts writing the scenario, we'll probably get that catharsis. I can't speak now. I've drunk too much wine.
Catharsis.
Thank you, catharsis. Catharsis. Sort of towards the end, maybe, but it's just because it just feels like, and also like the point where all three books have followed a very similar structure, where we start off sort of in a group or bigger groups, then people split apart. We come back together at the end. We have a kind of big battle scene, generally pretty much always with Balsamon. Balsamon gets defeated in one way or another, and then we repeat and we repeat, and perhaps that's the Wheel of Time cycle going on. But the first one we went to the other world and we had that big run, started doing all the power and destroying everything. The second one we had him sheathing the sword and defeating Balsamon that way. And the third one we've had the same sort of the same sort of storyline, just told in a different avenue. I just feel like I'm interested to see if we get something different in book 4 now that the Balsamon's body has been killed.
Yeah, it feels like he's actually gone this time.
Yeah, there's feel a little bit more final, but whether it actually means anything. And also, I suppose, not trying to jump around too much, I know we're going to close up soon, but also the White Cloaks. So what we didn't discuss is the prologue. And the prologue is all White Cloaks and like this lead of the White Cloaks and how they're sort of against it. But then we don't really see the White Cloaks much in the book at all. And we haven't seen we've seen bits of them, but we haven't seen a great deal, and how they, their role and how their role is going to be and grow within the next however many books. I'm curious to see, because it was interesting having that as a start point and then not really following up on it in this book again.
I wonder if Jordan's point is like, these guys are still around, so I'm going to give you a whole chapter of their like shenanigans. Because the couple of times that you do meet them, I was like, oh, actually, this is referring back to the prologue. This is interesting. So we're actually getting, like, he's paying off on that prologue with like throwaway lines. Like I think they talk to when they go to that town where the White Cloaks have been messing with everyone, and then they're like, oh, they'd heard that the dragon was around, but they didn't try and fight him, they just went away.
Yeah.
Ross, how do you feel about the ending? I don't know if you've had a chance to give your something to say.
A lot of it's already been said. I think it I don't think it's as black and white as you two necessarily made out. At least that's I didn't come away with the impression that Balsamon was gone for good. I agree as well that it kind of feels like Balsamon is kind of like, let's just throw him in there at the end of, it's like all three of these books so far have been like, I didn't really feel like we worked up to him suddenly appearing and being the antagonist for this end. So perhaps not hugely satisfying. But I didn't really pick up on. It's a good point. I think that Matt, you brought it up, that like of Balsamon and Lanfear being sort of like that's siblings. I kind of, there was a point where I was thinking like, oh, right, is it Lanfear who's like the dark one? And I didn't really get it, and that now it's kind of twigged. It's like, oh, I see. Okay, so that right. So, but yeah, to me, I'm still a little bit confused, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It might also just reflect the fact of how
the 4 year
how
gap.
far I blew through this book, and also I listened to the audiobook rather than reading it physically. So I probably missed some things in just that I was building these shelves actually as I was finishing the book. So I think at some point I was probably kind of like balancing about 200 kilograms of wood over my head as I was kind of like and not really paying much attention.
Listening to braid tugging.
Yeah, exactly.
Which audiobook did you listen to?
It was the Rosamund Pike one. Yeah, I thought Rosamund Pike's performance was good. It was particularly, I think she did a great job with Matt's voice. Maybe less so with Perrin's voice. Loyal, she absolutely nailed.
Yeah, I love her Loyal.
Yeah, but of course that's it for Rosamund Pike. Probably not going to. Well, we might get fourth, but who knows?
Well, the whole next season, so season 2 of Wheel of Time was based on The Great Hunt and The Dragon Reborn, so that the actor who played Rand did not just have a whole season where he wasn't in it. They merged the two books, but season 3 is exclusively The Shadow Rising. So apparently she will record that audiobook and it will drop when the season starts, but it'll be too late for me and Matt. Because I'm starting it next
probably
week.
won't be too late for me. I don't know if I'm gonna. I know you folks are doing. You're trying to do your monthly thing, aren't you? So
yeah, we'll be finished in March 2025.
Oh,
That's the plan.
Yeah.
I'm
hoping.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping now that you haven't got your Rosamund Pike audiobook that I can keep up. That's
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know how much reading I'm going to get done this month. I've got so little time. But yeah. So actually, let's talk. So Ross, are you excited to read another Wheel of Time book in the future?
To be honest, after this conversation, I am more intrigued in The Shadow Rising than I was after I actually finished the book. So you've both done a very good job of making me more charitable towards this book. I think I had to get over my issues with Robert Jordan's kind of characterization of women and in general, kind of like a lot of the contrived. Anyway, I had to get over that in order to I don't know, I can't remember what I was saying. Like I think that I now kind of want to know a bit more what's going to happen next, because I think I'd missed a bunch of those things that you were mentioning, and actually now I think that is quite an interesting setup for where it goes from here.
Yeah.
I want to see Rand get more mad. I want to see.
I assume there's got to be a cure for that at some point in the series.
Yeah.
Or like that they untaint the Sayadine. And I have an interesting theory on the like, oh no one can teach him to channel. I reckon they get Logain to teach him, because Logain is still kicking around in the White Tower. Because he's mentioned in Great Hunt and Dragon Reborn as being there. So I'm like, that's going to happen. They're going to recruit Logain to teach Rand how to use the One Power. Also, I want to just to warn you in advance. So the Idle World is 800 pages long. The Great Hunt is 705 pages long. Dragon Reborn is 699 pages long. And The Shadow Rising is 1004 pages long. So...
Step up.
Yeah. It is also apparently the longest Wheel of Time book, and most of them are around 700 pages. But most people say it's the best as well. The fourth book, The Shadow Rising.
Yeah, because I was looking at it because you messaged me saying like it is enormous and it's 900 pages in your version, and also really like thin paper.
Paper, it's Bible thin. It is
yeah,
Bible
so
thin.
I opened up the hardback, and the hardback's only 680 pages. I was like, that's not too bad. But when I'd opened it, I don't know if you can see on this, but they have rammed in the words. Like there is no margins here whatsoever. Like it's literally top to bottom. I was like, oh god, this looks horrific.
When I got to the Great Hunt and I noticed that they didn't do page breaks for chapters, I was like, Jordan's so like page. He's like got such a page budget from his publisher. He's like, no page breaks. We're not going to start again on the next page. You're going to have like 3 lines and a picture at the bottom of a page.
Yeah.
Makes me laugh every time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So that's good. I'm glad you're a bit more positive about it, Ross. That's good.
Yeah, I genuinely, this conversation has made me more charitable towards this. But I already gave it a 4 stars, so clearly I didn't dislike it. But I think that it's moved up in my priority list. I must say, I think it's easier to read than bloody Steven Erickson or whatever, which I'm trying to read.
Yeah, we're
that's
one for future for us, I think.
Yeah,
I'm really considering reading Gardens of the Moon to see whether I want to buy the Broken Binding editions, because they're very expensive. It's 150 quid for 3 books.
Yeah,
but I'm willing to spend that if I think that it's going to be like if it was going to be of like I was going to enjoy it as much as I enjoyed Wheel of Time, I'd be like, do you know what? Maybe I will pony up and I'll buy these sets of books. Although
But
£1,500 on 10 books is a lot of money.
there's
Oh, no,
absolutely
No, not that much.
they're very
500 quid.
readable books. Is the point? It's like they you have to kind of once you're 3 books in, you're kind of bought in a bit, aren't you? You do have a bit. You must be at least a little bit interested as to what's going to happen to these characters.
I feel like you need to. I've been told you need to read 3 Malazans to understand it and to get involved, and then you'll be in. Once you read 3, you'll be in.
It might be why I'm bouncing off Dead House Gates at the moment, but you know, like I think that I'm more likely to read The Shadow Rising this year than I was. And I'm saying this year because I'm not. It's definitely not next month. It's probably not the month after that, but it might be the month after that.
Well, when you've read it, maybe we can have another chat. We'll get the gang back
great.
together and do a Ross's thoughts on The Shadow Rising.
Oh, but they won't be very intelligent thoughts. Not compared after hearing Matt's thoughts on this book, I'm now starting to think like, oh.
This is when when now you're getting the other end of how I feel during the Sun Eater chat, where you're like, and all the themes are about what it means to be human, and I'm like, but he had a laser sword, Ross.
I find it a lot easier to find themes in sci-fi than I do in fantasy for some reason. Sci-fi, it's like the themes are just like right there, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is how this relates to modern life or whatever. It's like, yeah.
Why don't we wrap this bad boy up, seeing as we have kind of finished chatting about, I guess, the Dragon Reborn. Yeah, it's been a lovely chat, boys.
Thank you very much.
I will link both of these guys' channels in the description, as always. But did you guys want to do a mini pitch? Just be like, this is the sort of stuff I read on my channel. For anyone for the 1% of people that don't subscribe to both of them, that subscribe to mine.
Go on, Ross. You go first.
Thanks, Matt. So yes, I'm Ross of Hardy's Books. It is Ross and Laura. We are the two hosts of Hardy's Books, and we have a rather relaxed release schedule of roughly 1 video a week, and have lots of thoughts. So one of the USP of our channel is that we are also booksellers. So we come at it quite often from the collection angle and from the special edition or first edition angle. So lots of interesting things there, things for writers too, and spicy opinions sometimes. So check us out.
I saw your Demon in White review has gone up, and I'm reading Demon in White this month, so I'm excited to watch it when I finished it. Matt,
go for it.
How about yourself?
That's fine. So my name's Matt. If you haven't watched the previous 2, where have you been? My sort of channel is Bask in the Story. I read a lot of different genres and then talk about them infrequently at the moment on YouTube because I started a new job and it's a learning experience. So trying to balance everything. So sci-fi fantasy is probably the main ones, but I'll read almost anything: crime, classics, non-fiction, horror. I've read a bit of Stephen King this year, which has been quite good fun. So whatever takes my fancy, I will be reading. So come over and say hi if you haven't already.
Excellent. And if for some reason you've watched this entire video and you've never watched my channel before, I'm Sam Harrison. As you know from the intro, I read, review and discuss fantasy and science fiction books. I put up 5 videos a week. I pre-record a lot of these guys. So that's how I also record multiple videos on the same book, such as this one. It's how I fill the schedule. Thanks everyone for watching. And I will speak to you guys tomorrow.
I